I recently went on a holiday, which was great. 10 out of 10, highly recommended, would go on holiday again. What I would not recommend though is trying to make an entire video in under 24 hours while on holiday, because the most important climate change report maybe ever has just dropped. You can watch that up here so that all my efforts didn't go to waste. And for all 3 legs of my journey, I was lucky enough to be able to travel by train rather than flying. This had 2 very clear advantages. Firstly, it allowed me to cut down hugely on the carbon dioxide emissions of my travel. And secondly, it gave me a wonderful opportunity to brag. So how was your flight back home? Well, actually, I took the train. So I got the job. Oh yeah? Well, I got the train. I mean, if you can't feel smug about doing something good, why even bother doing it? But look, let's take a step back. We all know that flying sucks for the environment, but why does it suck so hard? And is there a way to fix it? On the face of it, flying might not seem like such a big deal. Globally, it's responsible for about 2% of emissions, which is less than things like electricity, industry, road traffic, and even shipping, which I spoke about up here. Okay, but if it's only 2% of emissions, what's the problem? Well, firstly, unlike power plants, which can be replaced with renewables, or the cars on our streets, which can be replaced with, well, electric cars or public transit, it is very difficult to decarbonize flying. But if we don't decarbonize flying, it could blow through around a quarter of our fossil fuel limit, our so-called carbon budget, within just the next few decades. And although flying is a relatively small percentage of the world's emissions, that's kind of because only a relatively small percentage of the world's inhabitants do actually fly. For those of us who are privileged enough to be able to fly, flying is one of the most environmentally destructive things we can do. Let's say you travel from London to New York and back again. Your seat on this flight emits about 1.2 tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent to eating around 500 Big Macs. Or for a comparison that I didn't write when I was hangry, that's equivalent to what an average Sri Lankan person emits in an entire year. But CO2 isn't even half of flying's problems. And I mean that literally. You see, flying has other ways of heating up the planet too. You've probably noticed those streaks in the sky that planes leave behind them. These are contrail cirrus clouds. And look, there are lots of conspiracy theories about these contrails. But before we get too tinfoil hat, here's what you actually need to know about them. They heat the planet up by trapping the heat the Earth's surface would normally emit to space. That's it. Well, that and they control your thoughts and make you impotent, of course, but that's a topic for another video. I knew it. On top of that, flying also emits NOx chemicals, which heat the planet even further. Taken all together, flying is responsible for about triple the heating effects that you would imagine if you just looked at the carbon dioxide emissions. Wow, that's pretty bad. And it gets worse. Sorry, that was the wrong tone. And it gets worse. That 1.2 tons of carbon dioxide for a return flight from London to New York, that was just for a typical direct flight. Things like older aircrafts, layovers, fewer seats in the aircraft, and fewer people in those seats on the aircraft can all raise that figure even higher. And we haven't even mentioned the scariest thing of all, ghost flights. Oh no! I mean, wait, what's a ghost flight? Ghost flights are when airlines fly completely passengerless flights just in order to be able to keep airport slots. This is something which has become all too common during COVID. Take the German airline Lufthansa, for example, which has admitted flying tens of thousands of these entirely wasteful journeys. Okay, yeah, that is spooky, but I kind of knew that flying sucked for the climate. How can we actually get this mother-fracking carbon off these mother-fracking planes? With difficulty. Airlines are talking about electric or hydrogen-powered planes, but that's still pie in the sky, and we need down-to-earth solutions today. Planes can be made more efficient, but not enough to actually solve this problem. One alternative would be using biofuels or synthetic fuels which are made with entirely renewable energy. The advantage would be we wouldn't need to change our flying fleet. The disadvantages would be there aren't actually that many of these fuels available. Plus, we'd need to be extra careful to make sure they were actually green. There are other approaches too, like carefully tweaking flight paths to lower the impact of contrail clouds. But even taken all together, these don't quite cut it. At least they don't quite cut it to the net zero that we need in order to stop climate change. So if the tech isn't there yet to fix flying, what can we do? Well, I hate to break it to you, but one of the things we can do is personal action. We can fly with more efficient airlines, or we can avoid layovers. And where possible, we can avoid flying altogether by taking alternatives like trains and coaches to drastically cut our emissions. But the truth is, there's a lot hiding in that where possible. Alternative means of transport often take a lot more time and money. Time and money that lots of us simply don't have. And that's assuming that the trip you want to go on can actually be travelled on using alternative means. And I hear the train from London to New York is particularly unpleasant at this time of year. We need policies that push people to fly less. For example, policies that rule out short-haul flights that could be easily made using other means. Or policies that reinforce the alternatives to flying, like high-speed rail, for example. Or policies that tax people who fly all the time, since they're the ones responsible for the lion's share of flying's emissions. And can we just be done with private jets? Please? Climate change is inherently unfair. It's a situation where the world's richest people are the most responsible, and the world's poorest people will suffer the worst consequences. And nowhere is this clearer than with flying. It's a sector where 8 out of 9 of the world's people have nothing to do with it, and yet it emits more carbon dioxide than almost any country. We need to have honest, healthy conversations about how bad flying is and how unfair flying is. And we need to admit that all our solutions to flying are pretty bad. So we probably need all of them together, structural and individual, to have a hope of keeping our feet on the ground. If you want to know more about what might just be the most important climate change report ever written, then you're going to want to check out my video up here. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, so that the algorithm knows just how delicious this video is. Okay, until next time. Bye.